Conversations with Suzanna, empowering you to look for and accept the good in everything. Broadcasting live on the World-Herald Live app or on omaha.com. Good conversations to entertain you, inspire you, and give you the information and ideas needed to create the life you want. This is Conversations with Suzanna.
You are exactly where you need to be. This is Conversations with Suzanna, heard on the World-Herald Live at omaha.com/Suzanna and on iTunes. Yes, this is a 24/7 show where you can go online and get up in the middle of the night, want to find out some information. You go online, Conversations with Suzanna, and you find anything you want to know about. We're covering the spectrum for you. If there's anything you want to talk about, please send me a Facebook or a Twitter and let me know what you'd like. We're here all the time to support you in all of your desires. Today, I have a very interesting show planned for us, and I must tell you, it was brought to me from Teresa, and Teresa introduced me to a Steve, and then a Steve introduced me to the March of Dimes. We all hear March of Dimes. We always hear it, but we really don't know what it's about, and today we're lucky enough to learn about it. It is From Polio to Prematurity, A History of the March of Dimes. This pamphlet is excellent. As a matter of fact, Jim Owen brought it in, and I stole it from him because it's a fountain of knowledge. And I'm going to ask our guest to please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jim Owen. I'm the executive director for the local market.
Okay, wait. Jim Owen, local director for the market of March of Dimes. Where are you out of?
My office is in Omaha. The market is Nebraska and western Iowa.
Okay, and how did you get to being the director? Besides filling out an app.
Yeah, hopefully because I performed well.
Okay.
I'm retired from the Air Force. I was in the Air Force for 20 years, and upon retirement, I got into the nonprofit field with another organization, and then transitioned to the March of Dimes about a year and a half ago.
Okay, and where are you? Where do you hail from? Where are you from?
I'm originally from Kansas, but a lot of people hear a tinge of Texas when I speak because I was stationed in Texas for 10 years.
Marvelous. So. Isn't the Air Force a great? I think military is phenomenal. It teaches core things and how to work. And this beautiful lady on your right, would you introduce her for me?
Yeah, Mary's our regional director of maternal child health, Mary Larsen.
Mary Larsen, and Mary Larsen, where do you hail from?
All my life here in Omaha.
And you began with the March of Dimes, how old?
Well,
how long ago?
About 7 years ago. Before
Okay.
that, I did. I was a program director for 30 years for a domestic violence sexual assault program here in the city.
Marvelous.
Yeah.
And the gentleman behind you who is not going to speak, he's just going to wave, is who?
That's Michael Fleming. He's our development manager in Lincoln.
Development manager. And then we go to this beautiful lady. And if you could introduce me to her, Mary?
This is Allie Greenquist. Allie is a dual role here today. She is our mission mom because she had a NICU experience, and she also is our NICU family support specialist here at 2 hospitals in Omaha.
Okay. What would you like me? Now, March of Dimes was started by President Franklin Roosevelt, and it was started. Tell me a little bit of the history of the March of Dimes.
Well, the president was diagnosed with polio, and he thought, what better way to fight it than to put his name on it. And I don't know who named it the March of Dimes after that, but he began the organization and had people sending dimes into the White House.
So that's
Piles.
probably where March of Dimes came from,
right?
Because they were sending dimes.
Yep.
It was actually called the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, and Eddie Cantor was a celebrity that was supportive of it, and he did a radio show. And so what happened one time was he was on the radio talking about it, and he says, march those dimes back to D.C., Washington,
Marvelous.
And it became the March of Dimes.
Marvelous.
Yeah.
Now, the March of Dimes started out with polio.
Yeah.
And Mary, you had some very interesting thoughts about polio because you were worried about polio. You couldn't go in the sprinklers. Is that correct?
Well, I grew up in Omaha, and so in the early 50s we had an outbreak of polio here. It was pretty frightening if you were a kid because you knew that there was a problem, and your parents only gave you so much information, didn't know what it was exactly. Because they didn't know what caused it or how it was spread, one of the things that people didn't do was to gather in places like theaters or swimming pools. And I remember my mother telling us that we couldn't run in the sprinkler because our family physician said you couldn't do it. And I never understood that, but as I've become more familiar with the March of Dimes, I realized that somewhere at some point they thought maybe it was the change in temperatures that made you more susceptible, because you had a hot body out in the sun and you get in a cold sprinkler. They didn't know what caused it.
Well, the March of Dimes is really about educating, isn't it? I mean, would you say that's your core?
I would say today it's very much a core piece. Back when polio was our focal point, we were really probably one of the only nonprofits in this country who reached their goal. Our goal was to conquer polio and eradicate it, which we've done in this country. And so at that point they had to kind of refocus what they were going to do, and they started looking at birth defects, premature births, and infant mortality. And so that's where the education comes more in line with that piece.
Well, this wonderful brochure shows me that in 1954, the sickle cell anemia as a molecular disease. I can't speak well with those kind of things. It's very interesting how you have the pattern from 1954 to 2006, and the discoveries of these doctors because attention was brought to it. Is that?
Well, and March of Dimes supports all kinds of research. And through the research that has been conducted, different things have been discovered. And what they were going after is how to prevent birth defects, how to prevent infant mortality, and how to prevent premature birth. But all along the way, they have discovered other things. And maybe they weren't set out to do that one in particular, but it came about. And probably the most important one for premature birth is surfactant and nitric oxide.
Pardon me?
Surfactant and nitric oxide.
Okay.
And
which are?
Well, do you know more about it than I do? But surfactant is something that your lungs develop, but when you're born prematurely, you don't have it, and so they give the babies surfactant treatments so that their lungs can help them breathe. And not talking about so much of my life, but many people remember that President Kennedy's Patrick Bouvier was born when he was president, and he died just within a few days. He was early. He probably had a lung problem that might have been prevented if they had surfactant at that time, because it wasn't discovered till later.
Huge distance from the iron lung, which was established in 1941. An iron lung to what we're doing today. I mean, who would have thought? I mean, is amazing. And you, young lady, you came to the show because of why exactly again?
So I have a NICU experience.
A NICU, for us who are laymen.
That is Neonatal Intensive Care Unit.
Okay. And how old was your baby when it was born?
I actually have twin girls. They were born at 31 weeks and 5 days.
31 weeks and 5 days. So
Yep.
the what we want is how old do we want I'm going to ask you.
39 weeks.
So he knew.
39.
Okay, 39 weeks. So you were 31, so they were 2 months earlier?
They were 2 months early, and they spent 51 days in the NICU.
51 days in the NICU.
Yeah.
And tell me what the last 2 months of that does. Mary, I think you're the brain here with Well, I'm sorry, Jim.
You were right. You're right.
I'm sorry. You're just a pretty guy here.
Well, the reason we want moms to go full term, which is 39 or 40 weeks, is because by then the baby's lungs develop, the brain develops, and their eyes and other organs. They're slowly growing. But when it's interrupted by a preterm birth, then you don't know exactly what will happen to that particular baby. Most babies turn out great, because our medical system has become so involved that they're able to almost treat the babies like they're still in utero. If you go into a NICU, you have this wonderful experience where it's quiet. The babies have opportunity for growth. They have just some very nice pieces that Allie can talk about more about what you can do with the baby as far as making sure that they have all the nurturing that goes on in utero, but they have it outside that at this point in time.
In utero is while they're pregnant.
Right.
I just want to get this clear so we all understand it. So, and the gentleman behind us, you also had some a pre-me, correct?
Yes, my daughter was born actually weighing 1 pound, 3.1 ounces.
1 pound?
She was at 27 weeks gestation, so 3 months early, and we stayed at the NICU for 3 months.
Wow. And yours was 2 months?
2 months, yep.
And 3 months. So tell me the difference, how that, well, and how did the March of Dimes help you do that, besides the research?
We were blessed when we were at the NICU. We had, there was a family program that had received a grant from the March of Dimes to do scrapbooking and outreach. So we had an opportunity to meet with other veteran families that had gone through that experience, and they were able to.
Oh, I bet that was.
It was assurance.
Amazing.
The first 2 weeks we were there. Well, the first week we couldn't hold our daughter. We had to just look through the incubator and watch her grow.
Oh.
It was a tough experience, but because we'd been there so long and we got a chance to meet veteran families, we also understood the alarms and all the other scary experiences and realized that they weren't as scary because we had great doctors and nurses.
Marvelous. And how did that help you?
So my daughter's at almost 32 weeks.
A pound and a half?
Yeah.
Did you say a pound and a half?
Just under a pound and a half.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
Her footprint's no bigger than my thumb.
Oh, sweet. How old is she now?
She'll turn 8 on April 15th, and she's as healthy as can be, and she just rules the world. She's a little princess.
Oh, my God. How wonderful. A pound and a half. All right. How big were your babies?
Yeah, mine were a little bit bigger. They were 3 pounds, 2 ounces, and 4 pounds, 1 ounce.
Well, I had 8-pound babies, so those are not big babies. Those are not big babies. So, and how did the March of Dimes help you in the
that experience?
Yeah.
We were in Utah when they were born, and the hospital we were at, unfortunately, didn't have a family support program that was very well established. And so when I wanted answers to questions that I had, I started looking online, and I found marchofdimes.org, and I got lots of information there. And then when they turned 1, we decided to do March for Babies. And so that's how we stayed involved with March of Dimes. And then last year, I became the NICU Family Support Specialist here in Omaha.
Marvelous, marvelous. So it eradicated polio, and so then we went to premature birth. Is there signs? Now, let's see. The brain doesn't start until he's 39 weeks to fully develop. Is that correct?
That's correct, right?
And the eyes, now there seems to be a big eye problem. Did your children have eye problems?
My daughters did not.
How about yours?
My daughter didn't, but I did say and watch the actual eye test, which I advise anybody, if you're in the NICU, don't. It's a scary, sad experience.
Oh, is it? What do they do? I don't want to know. Never mind.
Yeah,
Don't tell me.
I'll tell you later.
Okay. No, just don't even talk about it anymore. Okay. So, tell me of the variants of the eye problems.
Well, I think the earlier the baby, you can have more problems with sight, and often you have surgery. And with surgery comes any kind of potential infection, and various things like that can happen. And so it can be a big problem. We see a lot of 4 and 5-year-olds who still are wearing glasses because of their prematurity. And so they've had to have vision corrected. The problems with lungs can still happen. I remember one of our ambassador families we had, she was kind of sad. Her dad talked to her, and what the problem was, she was outside playing with her friends, but because her lungs still are having problems, even at 4 and 5, she had to go in and do a breathing treatment before that she had to go back out and play. And so that was really hard for her, right in the middle of having such a great time to have to interrupt it with a breathing treatment. And so they can have different problems. A lot of children just don't have anything at all. There are babies who will have a brain bleed while they're in the NICU, and even with that, sometimes...
A brain bleed?
Yes.
Please don't talk gently about this. I'm crying on the inside. Tell me about the brain bleed.
Well, they just, and Michael probably knows more about this as from being at the hospital, but they'll have a bleed in their brain, and it sounds really serious, and sometimes it can be, but sometimes it's not. Because I know young children now who are 4 to 10 years old who had a brain bleed, and they're operating just fine. And it's because of the great medical care that's being provided. And part of that was the research that the March of Dimes did early on, was how can we make sure that these babies grow outside of mom?
So the March of Dimes, I know you have a walk coming up, correct?
Right.
When is the walk exactly?
Saturday, April 23rd.
And how does one become part of the walk?
You can call our office, or you can go to the marchforbabies.org and sign up a team.
Okay. You must do other things. I can't imagine people just walking are making enough money to fund the research. So how do you, and how do we go about funding research? And
we primarily do 3 events locally. The March for Babies is the largest. We expect on the 23rd. We have 3 walks in the market. Omaha's is the 23rd. Sioux City, Iowa is the 23rd as well. In Omaha's event, we expect up to potentially 5,000 people to attend. And we hope to raise $400,000.
By walking?
By walking.
Gosh, I'll walk more. I'll walk more.
That's right.
And
the other 2 events that we do locally are a Signature Chef's Auction. It's a more of a gala type event. And then Nurse of the Year Awards. It's honoring the nurses in Nebraska and western Iowa.
Marvelous, marvelous. So can someone tell me a little bit what the NICU looks like, what the thing looks like when you go, so we can take away the scary...
Well, I'll let Allie answer the details of that,
okay.
But to somebody that has not had the experience of having a child there and having the experience of visiting and touring it, it looks like an intensive care unit on any other part of the hospital, but smaller, much smaller.
Okay, we'll be right back. We're talking to the March of Dimes, a great organization. I had not realized how good it was and how much they have done. They're going to have a walk here. It is quite an exciting group. Please stay with us. We're coming back. This is Conversations with Suzanna, heard on iTunes, heard on omaha.com/Suzanna. Also, you can also find us on all over the place. Just find us. We're there. We're here to support you. We'll be right back. You are exactly where you need to be. And I hope I'm supposed to be talking now. Sasha didn't give me the heads up look, but let me just tell you, you're exactly where you need to be. This is Conversations with Suzanna. We're heard 24/7. You go on iTunes, we're there. We go on omaha.com/Suzanna, we're there. Actually, you go there and you get to see the fine people in my studio, which we have today. And we have actually 4, which is our limit. And we're going to be talking about the March of Dimes. I've always said it. I did not know where they got the name of March of Dimes. Oh, that was so cool to hear that. Why they call it the March of Dimes. And I'm going to start here with Jim Owen. He is actually the division director, Jim. Welcome to the show, Jim. If you'll introduce these lovely cohorts.
This is Michael Fleming. He's our development director in Lincoln. Mary Larsen's our regional director of maternal child health. And Allie Greenquist is our NICU family support specialist in Omaha.
Well, I must tell you, for those who are not in the field, the NICU, where did they get NICU from? What does it mean, NICU?
It means neonatal intensive care unit. So it's the intensive care unit at hospitals for infants.
Okay. And I had Jim give up his seat to Michael, basically because, and Jim only cried a little bit, only threw a little bit of a tantrum, but that's okay. Because, Michael, why are you sitting there? Why did you take Jim's seat? Let's talk about this.
Well, because while I'm a staff member, I'm also a mission dad. My daughter...
A mission dad.
Yep. My daughter was born 1 pound, 3.1 ounces, 27 weeks gestation.
Okay. And you said one of the great gifts that you had is the scrapbook?
The scrapbook program that was done at St. E's at the time. And
at where?
St. Elizabeth's in Lincoln, Nebraska. Okay. That's where my daughter was born. We had a great opportunity to be able to learn from veteran families and have some outreach so that we felt secure, we felt confident. It's a lot what Allie does today. Yeah.
And I bet the whole thing when you're told the first thought, NICU, what is the first thought? Go ahead, Allie. Talk to me about this.
Well, it's very scary because it's usually unexpected and you don't really prepare yourself to be in the NICU. You don't want to be in the NICU. And so you're really scared what's going to happen to my baby, what's the outcome's going to be for them, what are they going to have to go through. So yeah, it's really scary.
So the doctor says to me, my baby's going to have to be in NICU. What do I do then? What is the first steps? How do I get to you? How do I get the support I need?
So I work at 2 hospitals in the Omaha area, and my first interaction with the family is when I'm at the hospital, I provide them with some education materials, and I visit with them and see how they're doing, where they're at, and see what kind of support role I can play for them. And if they don't have a family support program in the hospital, I would recommend going to marchofdimes.org and seeing what support they can receive online.
Okay. So there's a great relief knowing others have been through this. Is that what you found?
Yeah.
Definitely.
It provides support and somebody that can relate to your experience, even though everybody's experience is different. Just knowing that somebody else has gone through that roller coaster of emotions and the ups and downs of the NICU experience is a good support.
Now, because they're NICU in the brain, does that cause them problems in developing the brain? But you said we could do something for that, correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, part of it is that babies who are premature have trouble very often just even suckling. You know, they have that problem where it's something that as you get older, you have trouble just because you haven't, that's just one of the things your brain hasn't kind of taught you at that point. So there's a lot of work that's done to make sure that the babies can eat and that they can, either nurse or take a bottle. And so there's a lot of work that's being done there. And they're really pushing breastfeeding in the NICU. Yeah. Lots of the hospitals are, which is wonderful. But that's a simple thing that helps them. Just the whole, your brain is so, it tells you when to breathe.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And so, if your brain's not fully developed, then part of what they do at the hospitals, of course, is hook you up so that you can breathe, And so those are some of the pieces that happen at that point for those little tiny ones that we see.
Yes.
If you don't mind, I'll speak a little bit about the breathing and forgetting to breathe. When we were holding my daughter, there's moments when your child desats, and that's when your child pretty much forgets to breathe. And I was holding my daughter, and she was turning blue, and the alarms were going off. The nurse came in, picked up my daughter, hit her on the back, gave her back to me, and she was breathing. They walked out. And the reason why they walked out is because this is something that's actually common in the NICU at times, is your child will forget to breathe, and it's just because those neurons in the brain and all that are just underdeveloped. So what's a big concern to us ends up not being a concern for the nurses and then eventually the veteran families that are there, because then they understand your child just needs some stimulus because the brain's just that underdeveloped.
Wow. Now your daughter's 8 years old.
Yes. Well, she'll be 8 on April 15th.
So you don't have to slap her to remind her to breathe?
Nope.
I would imagine the fear of the sleeping, because now they have this whole sleep apnea thing, which is that come from a premature birth? Do you know?
I'm not sure that it does, but I know a lot of babies.
Because I'd go slap some people.
I know that some babies end up going home with monitors because they have issues with apnea. But most babies, I don't think they do. I think most of them go home without all that.
They try to avoid that.
Yeah.
One of my daughters went home on oxygen. She had a cannula in her nose. And on a monitor.
You know, the only thing as a mother and as a parent, you don't want to see your children suffer.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That's it. So tell me about the feeling of a mother and the feeling of a dad as you're doing this, and what were your thoughts at that time, if you can remember any of them. Go ahead.
I feel like you sort of feel like you can't help them, and you want to because you're their mom or their dad, you're their parent. You should be the one doing everything for them and taking care of them, and they're in a place where you can't provide all of that care because they need the nurses and the other staff in the NICU. So it's definitely a learning process and a hard experience to kind of figure out what you can do for your baby.
I come from a different aspect of, the mind control and things. Do you think it's important that you were in the NICU with them and staying? Do you feel that do you think that's a big thing?
It is. Definitely is. The people that are going to help their baby grow the most are the parents. The staff can do everything that they do.
Every treatment. Yeah.
But the parents are the most important people to be there with their baby.
And did you read to them?
Yeah. You read. With my girls, and what I do in the NICU now is encourage parents to read, to sing to their babies, to talk to them all the time, and to hold them. We do kangaroo care, which is skin to skin. So you hold them right on your chest, and they're wearing
kangaroo
just a diaper.
Care.
Yeah,
I love
kangaroo
that.
care. And you get to hold them, and it helps them breathing. It helps them get out of the NICU faster, and it's a really great thing to do that a parent can do that a nurse isn't going to do.
And that's probably just as critical for the parents too.
Yes.
Because once you bond with your child in that experience, you feel more comfortable when you go home. Because at some point you're going to be released from the NICU, and you have to feel comfortable to be a parent bringing home this baby that's gone through the 3-month, 2-month, 1-month stay. And the best way to do that is by being an active parent in the NICU, working with the staff and the people that will really help you feel comfortable.
Wow, what an informative show. We'll be right back. We're going to be talking to someone on the phone, and we'll be right back. This is Conversations with Suzanna. Now, you can download this and pass it on and learn from people who've experienced this horrible thing that we are making better with each dime. Conversations with Suzanna, heard on the World-Herald Live. The March of Dimes are with us right now. You are exactly where you need to be. This is a great show. Today we're talking March of Dimes, We found out how the dimes started. But we're finding out the great purpose of this, and the great help this is to parents and family members, from polio to prematurity. This brochure is rather fantastic. I'm a little disappointed Jim didn't show it to me before, but that's okay, Jim. Would you introduce the people in the studio?
Yes, Mike Fleming, Mary Larsen, Allie Greenquist, and myself.
Okay. Now, Jim, Owen, you are the exactly what?
Executive Director.
Okay. So you make sure everybody does their work right?
Yes, and thank goodness I've got a great crew.
Apparently so, because this Mary has rocked the interview. Right now, though, we're going to actually an 11-year volunteer for the March of Dimes, and he's also for Habitat for Humanity, Global Village. Oh my God, the things he does. Welcome to the show, Steve.
I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you for being on air. Now, we are doing this March of Dimes because you have told me that you're an 11-year volunteer of March of Dimes. Now, for all of us out there, who don't know how to get involved in things and volunteering, what brought you to the March of Dimes, Steve?
Well, actually, I wish it were a tremendously altruistic story. The reality is, initially, I was asked by my company to join the March of Dimes, to go on the board of directors. The First National Organization is very involved in the community, very philanthropic, and they thought it would be a good opportunity, and I believed it to be a good opportunity for me to get involved in the community as well. So that's kind of how the whole process started.
Well, I love the fact that corporations and things ask people to volunteer and work on it. So what have you learned, Steve France, from the 11 years that you've had with the March of Dimes?
Yeah. It's a tremendous organization, and my whole experience really has evolved over a 10 or 11-year period of time. As I mentioned, initially it was more just somebody asking me to become involved, and I became involved, and we helped to turn around a chapter here in Nebraska that was struggling to a certain extent. We did an outreach into the community. The executive director at the time was a fellow by the name of Jeff Beckman. He and I spent a lot of time out in the hospitals, out in corporations, asking for money, asking for board members. But it really wasn't until several years later, as the chairman for the March for Babies, which is the big event coming up that I'm sure you've discussed, I had an opportunity to see a NICU, or a neonatal intensive care unit, for the first time, and that probably was the point that I decided that I was going to continue to be involved with the March of Dimes. The tremendous work that the organization does in these NICUs with both the babies and the families, it's just the impact that prematurity has on, A, the health of a child long-term well into adulthood, and B, the effect that prematurity has on the family, the mother, the father, the siblings as well too, really just can't be overstated. You just can't. It has tremendous impact. And me going in and seeing some of these babies in these little tiny boxes being kept alive by these tremendous doctors and these neonatologists and these other people, really had a real tremendous and I think long-lasting impact on me.
Well, thank you. And is there anything you would tell anybody who was thinking of volunteering for the any organization? I'll be honest with you. I love people who volunteer because, it's not what you do for yourself that counts, it's what you do for others, and that's so showable. What would you tell us that you've learned, because you're with several groups on volunteering? What would you tell us your life lesson about volunteering has taught you?
Well, I think sometimes we tend to get into our own heads and into our own minds and into our own issues and into our own problems. And I've always discovered, or I guess I've learned over time, that the best way really to elevate yourself and to feel good about yourself and to get past and move past these issues and problems is to volunteer and to go out and to touch and to see these little premature babies, to spend time with these families that are affected, to go, as I'm going here in a few weeks, to South Africa and help build an orphanage for little AIDS orphans and the caretaker. I'm telling you what, you get so much more back than you put into these deals. I would highly recommend that everybody find at least one organization or one charity to get involved with, and trust me, you'll get very high return on your investment.
Thank you very much for being on the show, and we have two people in the studios that have been involved personally with the NICU unit. We have Michael Fleming. Tell him a little bit about the what March of Dimes has done for you.
Well, actually, I'd like to more speak to his volunteerism. I want to thank you as a mission dad. I'm a staff member now, Steve. I've got a chance to meet you maybe a couple years ago when I was on the volunteer side. But I want to thank you as a mission dad first and foremost, because the time that you dedicated to the March of Dimes to help us be successful. My daughter's going to turn 8 April 15th, and I guarantee you that there's going to be more babies that are going to hit those pivotal years because of the hard work you've done. So thank you so much on that end. And just thank you for stepping up and really helping out.
And our beautiful lady.
You're kind. Thank you. I appreciate that.
We have our beautiful lady, Allie, on the side, who had twins who were in the NICU. Michael's baby was 1.5 pounds. That still amazes me. And your NICU babies, how old were they?
They were born at almost 32 weeks. They will turn 5 in May. Mm-hmm. And they spent a little over 2 months in the NICU. And March of Dimes helped me through that experience. And then I've stayed first volunteering with March of Dimes for their March for Babies event. And then now I work as a NICU family support specialist.
So the whole thing is doing something for another. Mm-hmm. Bringing forward an idea that will support others. And Mary, is there anything you want to, as we begin to close out this session, is there anything you would like to say about the March of Dimes and people who want to volunteer? Wait. Well, Mr. Clean, tell me about Jim. I meant, tell me about how one volunteers and what do you need volunteers for?
We need volunteer leadership from the community, board members for our special events committees. We need people to get involved. As much success as the March of Dimes has had, we still have more than 2,400 babies in Nebraska born premature every year, about 1 in 10.
Wow.
We're doing much better than we were a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
but it's because of the people that volunteer and help and raise funds and get involved.
So how does one volunteer? And how does one volunteer if they don't know what they can do?
Well, we can let them know what they can do.
Okay. I bet you could, Jim.
Yes, we can.
I bet you could.
Call me, 402-718-8507. My email's jowen@marchofdimes.org.
Mm-hmm.
Get involved. Marchforbabies.org is the website to go to now to sign up for our March for Babies in Sioux City, which is April 23rd, Omaha, April 23rd, and Lincoln's the 30th of April.
Okay. And Mary, what would you say about the volunteers and...
Well, we can't do it without the volunteers, and they are the ones that kind of lead the staff to making things better. From parents saying, I think it would have been helpful in the NICU if I had XYZ, to developing a NICU family support program that was developed.
I love the support group. I'm just so thrilled that there is something out there that will guide people to know, well, this is, the story of you having the nurse come in and slap your baby to get it breathing again is so profound. I mean, when you think about just those little things that we always take for granted. We're coming right back. This is Conversations with Suzanna, heard on the World-Herald Live app and at omaha.com/Suzanna, and on iTunes. You can take this down, pass it around 24/7. Exactly where you need to be. This is Conversations with Suzanna, heard on the World-Herald Live app and at omaha.com/Suzanna, also on iTunes. Right now we're going to have my beautiful Sasha read the April affirmation I bring out, the April lesson that I bring out every month. If you're on my Facebook or my Twitter, we put out a little thing that every month to give you some inspiration for the month. And Sasha, if you'll take it away.
April is the month when the earth opens up to seeds and the budding of new growth. Life opens up to what is planted in the fertile ground or our fertile mind. Those pesky weeds or unhealthy thoughts pop up when or where we least expect it. If we ignore them, they take over our life, but would happen if we noted the unhealthy weed or thought, recognize it and release it. As they appear, let's recognize and release and grow in the light.
The affirmation.
I recognize and release the past thought and move into my happiness.
Okay. Thank you, Sasha. And I would like to thank these 4 beautiful people from the March of Dimes who have taught us a lot about the March of Dimes. Please feel free to go download it on iTunes. At omaha.com, you get to see who they are. And then at iTunes and World-Herald Live. Thank you again. We'll be back. We're all about empowering you. If there's anything you want to talk about, just give us a heads up. This is Conversations with Suzanna, heard on the World-Herald Live, iTunes, and omaha.com/Suzanna.
What's up?
Hello, Michael Severe. I've heard many good things about you and your radio talk show, and I'm excited to be on it with you.
I'd like to apologize for putting you in the bracket thing we did for the voices and people who write. I'm sorry about that. I apologize. My fault.
I just want to know where you were. That's all I want to know. Where are you in this bracket?
Have you at any point ever followed any of the selection committee? What happens is the person from that particular conference leaves the room. I was the selection committee. I couldn't be in the room.
You recused yourself.
I had to.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Well, how do you rank yourself? Okay, so you're putting it together, and you put yourself as a 1 seed. Everybody's like, oh, a 1 seed. You put yourself as an 8 seed. What do you do? Where do you put yourself?
You think you put yourself right in the middle. You say, look, I'm right in the middle of the road. I'm a 4, baby.
I'm a solid 4. I'm a solid 4. Hey, can you remember any worse basketball games than we saw on Saturday ever in the history of the world?
No.
Good. Okay.
It was terrible. It was just, well, look, when the 17-point game is the close one, and you're like, man, we got us a game here. No, we don't ever have us a game. There was never a game. It was just, no, it was awful. It was so, I mean, look, I'm begging for a good game tonight. I'm just begging for, because I've really not had one the entire tournament. I mean, we had Purdue Little Rock in Denver.
Yeah.
But that was it was a 14-point game with 5 minutes to play.
I don't care. You had a great call.
It's hard for me to think of that.
It was great. You had a great call.
Well,
that's all that matters.
The call was fine, and that's great, but bad.
Okay.
Bad. And then the worst loss in the history of the Final Four.
Yeah.
95-51. What are we talking about here?
Well, we're talking about the ability to watch episode 7 with my kids for the 3rd time. Is that what you gave us there? I appreciate that. We just put that on and said, screw it. Why are we going to watch this basketball? Let's just watch some more episode 7. It was good.
Yeah. And you know what? You won, because there really wasn't much. There was no drama in that. Villanova was not going to allow Oklahoma to come back in that game. It just was not going to happen at any point. So, yes, you won. Congratulations.
So, look, I went out and I found the ultimate radio so I could listen to your games, you know, because I have to be able to take the radio around the house, and I don't want it ever to die, so it's a solar-powered. You can charge it with your phone. It's an amazing radio. It's also apparently waterproof because my kids tried to wash it in the bathtub. But it works wonderfully. I set it up next to me to listen to you call my Syracuse Orange game, and, you know, I turned it off after about 8 minutes left in the second half. That sucked too, man. I didn't like that at all. I want to tell you about that.
I'm sure you didn't. You couldn't have liked it. If you were if you're a Syracuse or an Oklahoma fan, you hated everything about Saturday. If you're a North Carolina Villanova fan, you thought it was the greatest day in the history of mankind because you just pummeled somebody relentlessly. And look, there's no shame in losing to better teams, and I really do think that this tournament this year has produced the 2 best teams in college basketball that are playing for the national championship. That's not always the case, but I really do believe these are the 2 best teams in college basketball.
You say that, and we think Villanova in the Big East, everyone always thought, well, Jay Wright's got some good teams, they're okay, but they're going to end up choking somewhere along the way, probably the first or second round. How surprised are you that they are here at the end?
You know, a little bit, just because they've kind of had those struggles in the tournament, but this is a really veteran and really cohesive unit. Just being around these guys a little bit over the course of the last week or so, you really can sense that with these guys, that they were kind of driven. You know, in a lot of ways, you could compare it to, you know, because this always works in this area, Nebraska football of '94. they're not that overwhelmed. Well, and look, Nebraska football in '94 wasn't the most talented Nebraska team that's ever played, but they were a driven team. They were driven by the failure of the year before, and I think this team was kind of the same way, driven by the failure of the year before to get to this point and kind of vindicate and validate their program. And I think they feel like they've not quite done it yet, although I think they have. And honestly, I think this is, as big as it is for Villanova, I think it's equally as big for the entirety of the Big East, because this is a league that's been trying to claim a mantle as a power conference in basketball. And I really think by Villanova getting to the national title game, I think it goes a long way towards helping that league reestablish some sort of prominence in the college basketball landscape.
Looking back at the way Villanova shot against Georgetown in '85, I never thought anybody would shoot that well again. Does what Villanova did on Saturday wipe out the discussion that you can't shoot in domes?
It has to, right? I mean, look what they did. They came out and they just blew the doors off the joint, 71% from the floor. And from three-point range, they were 11 of 18. You cannot make that argument anymore, because this is not a great Villanova shooting team. They're a good shooting team, but this is a team that came into that game shooting 48% from the floor. That's pretty good, but it's not like record-breaking field goal percentage. This is a good shooting team that had a great shooting night in a place that has not yielded much in the way of great shooting nights in the history of the NCAA tournament, now 13 games at NRG Stadium, or 14 games rather. I don't think you can look at this anymore and say, okay, it's the stadium's fault, because Villanova, and look, North Carolina in the second game shot 54% from the floor and shot a ton better from two. So this is not, neither one of these teams have been at all daunted by shooting in this building.
Kevin Kugler joining us from Westwood One as the call to tonight's championship game. So what about as an announcer in these buildings? Is it feel different for you in this big old place? And is the sound different? Is the crowd different?
Crowd's different. I've always thought the crowd was a little more subdued in these places, and there's so much more of it. But it gets sucked up a little bit by the expanse of the stadium, and because they're further away from the floor, you notice the crowd more in football at a big stadium than you do in basketball, which is weird because you're right down in the middle of it. But it's hard for me to say that the crowd isn't different. I've always thought that the crowd in, say, the mid-size actual basketball arenas, in a lot of instances, was better than the crowd is, even though it's bigger in these. But they put them in these because they have the ability to sell tickets in these. And if you're the NCAA, look, you can grumble about it all you want, but if you're a business and you have the chance to bring in 30,000 customers or 75,000 customers, you're going to choose the 75,000 customers every single time, even though it may mean that your business is a little more crowded or a little less personal or whatever. It's the bottom line. They're making a whole lot more money doing it, and so for the rest of time, this Final Four is going to be in a giant arena because they can sell tickets for it.
You've had
that's the only reason.
Yeah, definitely. You had so many good color commentators over your time. I mean, Raph is the best. He's probably the voice of college basketball right now. But you got Clark Kellogg, a guy my age. I wanted to be Clark Kellogg in 7th and 8th grade. What's it like? I mean, the guy's the nicest guy in the world, but what do you think about this crew you have for tonight?
You know, I really am, and I will say this to you since it's just the two of us and nobody's listening to this anyway. I am really pleasantly surprised that Clark and Coach Thompson have had such a great chemistry to start things off, because Raph and Coach Thompson had a wonderful chemistry, not only from years of being friends, but years of coaching against each other, being in the Big East from the ground up. All of those things provided such a long-lasting friendship, not just a relationship on air, but a friendship. Well, I've been really excited to see how those two have meshed together, because Coach Thompson wasn't with us last year and now is back with us this year. And they really get along well. They really respect each other. And as you said, Clark is one of the nicest human beings on earth. I mean, he is just a genuinely super human being, and he's working his tail off at this Final Four. I mean, he's on the air longer almost than the radio is, which is hard to do because radio pregames go on forever. But he does the pregame